key. It's an estimate.
Would you agree that these closing costs are about 5% to 6%?
Well, that's a lot of the costs are fixed costs, and it can vary widely depending on the size of your transaction. So I don't think I'd be cautious about putting a percentage on it for the purchase price. I mean, 5% sounds really high to me if you're dealing with a $250,000 transaction. If you're dealing with a $100,000 transaction, then that's going to sound more in line. But I'd say it's more of a fixed cost than it is a percentage. That's the way I would look at it. Okay.
So time to work on a 100,000 and a 400,000 is the same?
No.
Well, for the buyer, typically yes. Okay, because the seller makes up the difference.
Yeah.
You're looking at a.
This is years old, so it's off. Like on a $100,000 transaction in Missouri last year, it was $442. In Kansas, it's $417. So it's depending on what state, there'll be different charges, and that just covers the title work. That's for the seller. And then over here you have.
That's key. That's for the seller.
So you have closing. You have closing protection of $25. You got a owner's premium of $130, and you have a Missouri title exam service charge of $287. So and that says right here, seller's closing fees are $150. The loan policy issues simultaneously with owner's policy, not to exceed the owner's policy amount. Please call Missouri premium and title exam service charges breakdown. Total charges will not exceed $275 for loan policies up to $360,000. So new one fee buyer borrow closing $330 for property in Kansas, $355 for properties in Missouri. So they all have these little rate cards, and you just call your title company, and they'll be glad to bring one over to you.
And those rate cards, remember, they're the expenses that varies widely with loan size is a seller expense. Typically, the buyer's expense is going to be total of fees, and like I said, I'm high, and I agree with Tori, I'm high on that, is going to be what I estimated on there. Okay? So, regardless of transaction size, getting back to your point as far as percentage, strictly the buyer. On the seller, yes. Strictly the buyer, I wouldn't use percentage, I would use more fixed costs. Okay? Because really appraisal, credit report, all underwriting and those types of fees are all fixed costs, regardless of loan size. Okay? Obviously, your taxes and insurance are going to be more the higher the purchase price. So those will vary. But as far as lender fees are typically fixed costs. In other words, they do not vary depending on transaction size. Okay.
Everybody smarter now than they were when
Yes,
they walked in the room.
yes. Well, why?
Very
Thank you,
good.
Sky. Nice job.
Very
Really
good.
appreciate it.
In the future, I think, what do we have coming up next week? Is it?
We have contracts again, but we're doing, we did resale, now we're going to do new home, and then in addition to that, after that, it's going to be HUD. I got a confirmation on that with Chris Dawson, and then after that, we're going to do another training on contracts.
So the HUD, what's going to be nice about HUD, I get calls all the time, and Lynn Musselman knows more about HUD contracts than Tori Graham.
So call I just want to
yes, until the training, yes. I'm just kidding.
Terrible.
No, but HUD contracts are just totally different than the regular contracts we write.
The whole process is different.
The whole process, how you do it, all that, and so we're bringing in an expert who is going to teach us about HUD contracts.